Mollie Green.
And
Darren Rudge.
I saw Monty Don just going hell for leather with a hoe.
I'd certainly keep them going all the year round.
The Happy Garden.
Welcome, lovely friends, to another episode of the Happy Garden podcast. My name is Mollie. Hello, I shall be your host for the next hour or so. It is a pleasure to be with you today, tonight, whenever it is you're listening to this. Now, we've had another week of glorious sunshine and blustery showers. A week of basking in the sunshine when you tilt your face up to the sun and enjoy every last ray whilst debating whether or not to mow the lawn. And then realising that there's a massive black and purple cloud over Bill's mother's house, which is coming your way, and then quickly gathering in the garden furniture, cushion pads and anything else that might get wet. But hopefully you've managed to do a little bit of gardening in the breaks that we have had in the rain this week. And one man who is out come rain, come shine, he's not Nesh. He's your expert. He's Darren Rudge.
Hello.
Dazzler pants.
Hello.
All right, you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. It's a lovely sunny day today, but a bit blustery, isn't it?
Yes, the day we're recording this. Well, it said heavy rain on the forecast, but actually, yeah, it's beautiful. The clouds are moving ever so fast and the sun is out.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And it's warm. Quite warm.
Let's have a look.
Don't you think?
7 degrees. You can tell we live in Britain. There'll be people listening elsewhere in the world like, what?
Is that frost?
For us, that is quite warm, isn't it? 7. But it feels warmer when the sun is on your face, doesn't it? It's lovely. It's
Get
lovely.
out there. Get out there.
Now, on the Happy Garden podcast this week, the RSPB will be joining us to discuss the results of the Big Garden Birdwatch, the UK's largest garden-based citizen science project, which took place at the end of January this year. We were talking about it on the pod. And we're going to hear more from Jimmy the mower, who we had the pleasure of meeting last week on the podcast. Isn't he ace? I love Jimmy. Yeah. We'll find out how he and his business have fared in the torrential rain we've had for months, and he's got to have some lawn care advice from you, for you, should I say, as well. You've got all sorts of bits and bobs. Really interesting stuff from you today, Darren.
Yeah, well, I'm back from Whitby, so I've had a week off. Hey! Rambling around Whitby, and this week I will be doing some money-saving tips. I'll be doing jobs for the week ahead as well. My normal jokes, but... Ever fancied being buried in your own back garden? OK, what's the legalities to do with having a burial in your back garden? I'm going to tell you. It's fascinating, folks. Really is fascinating. As well as sow and grow. I'm talking about popping seeds outdoors, how to prepare for it, and sort of the general rules and regulations to get your seeds underway outdoors. Because it's time to do that, folks. It's April. Get them out there in the ground.
Yeah, so a continuation of Darren's seed sowing slot. We will have a little chat later on as well about protecting your bulbs from hungry visitors to your garden and your pots. Andy Land's a lovely one today, Darren. Andy Land's going to be here with his horticultural histories. He's focusing on the bluebell today.
Oh,
it's
lovely.
beautiful. Yeah, it's a really, really nice piece. And did you know their sap used to be used to bind books and glue feathers onto arrows?
Yes.
Of course you did. You're a gardening expert.
Sorry, Andy.
Well, it was news to me, I tell you. With more uses as well. So he's here in a little while as well. That and more. No, actually, I think
more.
No, I think it's just that.
all of this and more still to come on
The Happy Garden.
with Mollie Green and Darren Rudge.
Well, it already sounds like a bumper edition, doesn't it? I have 8 pages printed out today. 8.
I know. I looked at the notes earlier.
But then, in my defence, I think it probably will be a lengthy show, but I have printed it out in big letters. I look like I'm shouting at myself, so I should have smallified it, really. Anyway, shall we start? Shall we go rogue to begin with? Yes?
Yes. Let's go rogue.
Because ordinarily we start with jobs for the week ahead, but I thought we might start with your money saving today on the pod. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, live on the Happy Garden podcast, it's time for
Darren's money saving tips. Well, yes. Go, man, go.
Well, it's weed season, isn't it? And if you don't get on top of them, folks, then you're going to have problems in the summer, aren't you? But have you got weeds coming through the cracks in your paving? Well, most people have, haven't they, at this time of year? So weed them out and get yourself some baking powder, baking soda, or even bicarb. It's all the same stuff, really. It's just the baking agents have a rising agent in there. And just sprinkle the powder into the cracks, folks. And you can do that 3 times a year and basically acts as a residual herbicide. So, in other words, it stays in the soil and anything that tries to push their way through gets burnt. There's your sustainable weed solution for the cracks in your pavement. Go on, get out there with your bicarb and see what the neighbours think you're up to. But sustainable solutions, that's what we're all about. There you go.
Good.
Cracks in the pavement, weeds, gone.
I am gonna say right at the end of your money saving piece there, Darren, because whenever you mention bicarb or baking, we invariably get at least 5 or 6 emails saying it does make a difference. No, but it only makes a difference if you're making a scone. Yeah, it won't make a difference in your recipe, will it?
No, not at all.
Bicarb and
no.
baking soda.
Yeah, use it. Just use it.
Yeah.
Abuse it.
Right, Darren. A good and sustainable alternative. Nice.
Yes.
Well, yes. Darren's money saving tips. So, at the end of January, you and your family might have taken part in the Big Garden Birdwatch, which is the UK's largest garden-based citizen science project, aiming to see how many garden birds we have and how they've been faring in our gardens over the last 12 months. I spoke to Luke Phillips from the RSPB and asked him this year's results. Are they good? Are they bad?
Well, it's a really interesting sort of situation, because what Big Garden Birdwatch has done over the last 45 years or so has kind of built up a sort of picture of our garden birds. That's the kind of whole point of it, is to build that sort of detailed picture of how they're faring. And, it's been up and down, actually. We've seen some birds go up, which is brilliant, but equally, it really does show that, some of our garden birds are in an awful lot of trouble. So, it's on the whole, it's probably flagging that, nature is in a lot of trouble in the UK, unfortunately. And there's lots that we need to do to try and help it. But, equally, I think the fact that this year, over 600,000 people took, time out of their weekend to do this survey is, I get a lot of hope from that, actually. So, so I think that's positive.
I remember speaking to you guys actually when we did it earlier on in the year, and you were saying it's just you have the biggest response every year. This is just such a huge thing and such a wonderful thing as well. I remember you were outlining about getting the family involved, getting kids inspired to look at wildlife and birds spot. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it, just to take part in?
Oh, absolutely. And when you dig into sort of the range of people who do this, like you say, it is from, kids who are just, able to pick up a pair of binoculars maybe and kind of, look out the window to see the birds to, I remember when I was a youngster, my grandparents were taking part. And this year, we've seen, yeah, absolutely. I've been doing Big Garden Birdwatch, since, as far back as I can remember. I'm in my sort of 30s now, and that, so at least the last 20 years must be.
Oh, wonderful. How wonderful. We must ask, Luke, who has fared well then? The top 5, say, that's been revealed?
Yeah, so nationally, what we've got, the situation is we've got the house sparrow still at the top. I think it's now been at the top for over 20 years, actually. But sparrow is an interesting case. And, before get too excited the fact that it's at the top, it's actually still one of our most declining birds. House sparrows on the red list in the UK, which means they've declined by over 50% since around the 70s. So, even at the top at the moment, the average count was about 4 per garden. So if you go back a long way, there could have been 8 per garden, say back in the 70s. But still at number 1, which is, which is good. That means that they're still with us, which is fantastic. Then we've got blue tit in number 2. Blue tits are a fascinating little bird, really common in lots of our gardens. These are real opportunist species, and they can exploit all sorts of situations. They love our garden bird feeders, they love our nest boxes. So that's a kind of bird that's, doing probably reasonably well in our gardens. Number 3, we've got the starling, really familiar bird, I imagine, for lots of people. And, if you cast your minds back, I know we're in spring now, but, think back to the winter, you may have seen the murmurations sort of swirling around the skies, over our times. It's a fantastic thing to see. But they're in number 3, but again, another red listed species. It's a bird that's been declining since about 1995. I think they're down around 53% as a breeding bird in the UK.
Oh,
so
that's
those
sad to
murmurations
hear.
are a bit deceptive. Yeah, they're a bit deceptive sometimes.
We were, thinking that, there's loads of them, when in fact, look, we were talking about that not too long ago on the show, saying that we used to, I know definitely, I'm just a little bit older than you, but I remember with we used to be at my grandma's house in Brum, in Birmingham, and we would see the murmurations every evening over, around the city centre. It was incredible. Really don't see them in the city these days. It's quite noticeable, actually.
It is, yeah. I mean, we don't. I mean, where I am, I don't see it that often. They're often in sort of reed beds or wetlands these days. They seem to sort of be a little bit more frequent on sort of RSPB nature reserves and other nature reserves around the UK. But it is a bird that's disappearing quite fast. And hopefully we might talk a little bit later about gardening and stuff, actually, because starlings, I think there is something people can do. But just for our list, just to wrap up the top 5 here, we've got the wood pigeon in number 4, which is I always call them the humble wood pigeon. I kind of I hear people say slightly negative things about some the old wood pigeon. I really like them, and they're kind of a bold bird in our gardens that seem to enjoy. I mean, they eat my brassicas and the tops out of my lettuces in my garden. So they depends. Some mornings I'm not too pleased about the wood pigeon being around in the garden, but I forgive them. They're entertaining to watch, at least. But they're in number 4.
Yep.
And then we've got number 5, blackbird, which I think is again a really familiar species, one that we'll hear singing this time of year, actually. This is a great time to open the window first thing in the morning as early as you possibly can. Hear them singing.
The dawn chorus at the moment. Wow.
I know. Yeah, it's just getting to that time, isn't it? When I feel like it's quite funny to talk about Big Garden Birdwatch. You have to think back and those cold, wet, miserable days of winter. Which we've had a long old winter this year, but there's a definite sign of spring in the air now with the birds singing, and blackbird's probably the loudest in my garden at the moment. So but number 5 in this year's Big Garden Birdwatch.
And is that a surprise? You've outlined the top 5, and I know that 9.5 million birds, 80 species, were recorded during the Big Garden Birdwatch this year. Any surprises?
So when you dig right into that, I mean, 80 species is pretty phenomenal in its own right. When I see these results come through every year, I think, wow, that's a huge range of species. But it sort of reflects where people do their Big Garden Birdwatch. So we encourage people to take part kind of wherever they are. So some people might have a nice garden where they can watch the bird feeders. Some people might have a balcony in the middle of a city, and the range of birds that they might see could be quite different. It might just be a few feral pigeons, but every bit of data we get from Big Garden Birdwatch is useful. But I think also some people head to their local park and see some interesting species there. Perhaps if there's a pond, mallard duck might appear on there, or a coot or a moorhen. But one species just to highlight, because there are some still around, I believe, at the moment. But waxwings were a bit of a thing this year. A waxwing is a gorgeous bird. It's got like a sort of a punk style hairdo. It's kind of sort of a pinkish colour overall, but it's got these delicate little red sort of waxy droplets on its wings, which are just so part of the feathers. It's not actually wax, but that's where they get their name from. But they're visitors from Scandinavia, and they come over not that often, actually, but this year is like what we call a bit of an eruption year. So lots have come over to join us for the winter. And a few of those popped up on people's Big Garden Birdwatch as well. So so I think some people were very lucky this winter with the old waxwings.
That's lovely. And talking of migratory birds, Luke, I must ask you, it would be remiss not to. We're talking chickens shortly on the Happy Garden podcast, and getting chickens. And I know bird flu is a consideration that a lot of people do have with birds. How have we fared this year? I have chickens myself, and they weren't locked in to the extent that they were the year previous with bird flu. How has the UK been affected with the migratory birds this year?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, this winter, it doesn't feel like it's been as prevalent as past winters, in our ducks and geese and swans. So, the winter wildfowl, as we sort of call them. But, bird flu is still a big threat, though. It still exists in the wider countryside. It's still amongst our bird populations. And the last few years, actually, it's impacted our seabirds an awful lot more. So species like gannets that, if you head to the coast, particularly, maybe along the North Sea coasts and further north in Scotland, gannets are just a fantastic bird that spectacular. They're really big and they dive into the sea, catching sandhills and mackerel and all sorts. But they've taken a huge hit in the last few years. And also, our tern species, which are talking of migratory birds, they're all just arriving back now to their colonies. So we're kind of holding our breath a little bit, because as these birds come back to their breeding colonies, we might see some big changes in their numbers this year based on the impacts of bird flu from the last few years. So it hasn't gone away, but this winter hasn't been as bad as it has been in previous years, I feel. So yeah, it's one to watch still.
If you'd like to get in touch with Mollie Green and Darren Rudge at the Happy Garden Podcast, then all you have to do is follow them on social media. Just search for The Happy Garden Podcast. If you'd like to send them an email at The Happy Garden Podcast, you can email thehappygardenpodcast@gmail.com. Can we say Happy Garden Podcast just one more time?
9 was magpie.
The Happy Garden Podcast.
Tit.
One year they had a little game, on there, and you could log on. And you put your details in, and they basically tell you what bird you would be if you was a bird. Oh. And I came out as a great tit.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
You actually, I remember you telling me that years ago. Yeah. You ruddy great tit. Yes,
quite prophetic, I think.
Oh, hardly. We love you, Darren. Fabulous. As I say, we'll be back with Luke in a little while. Now, as we went rogue and didn't start with your jobs, shall we do some now?
Well, we can do, if you like.
Sunshine and showers, it's the order of play for the week ahead. So dodge in the showers if you're going to get out and about. Darren, let's get some jobs for the week ahead.
Now in the Happy Garden.
Oh, I say, sweetie, this is my favourite bit. Time for Darren to be absolutely flabulous and regale us with his gardening jobs for the week ahead.
Well, yes. 2, 1, and go.
So watch your roses, folks, for build-up of green fly and black spot and all those sorts of things. And do treat at first signs of attack. That's the big thing, is make sure you treat as soon as you see them, folks. Don't let them go on. Okay, check ties on all staked trees to ensure they're not too tight before the new season expansion. Just loosen them off a little bit, otherwise they'll bite into the bark. Recently planted trees and shrubs and hedges need to be checked for water, and just make sure that they're not short of water. They shouldn't be after the rain we've had, but you never ever know, folks. Clip hedges that have not been clipped earlier, but make sure there's no nesting birds or birds starting to nest in them. It's too early to plant out your bedding, but what you can do is prick out bedding plants that have been sown. Okay, start to cool them down a little bit and start to get them used to the outside environment. Tidy up your flower beds now before the weeds go too far, okay, and the ground is still soft.
Fab, thank you very much. We'll have some of those, more of those, a little bit later on. Right, well, now we're in the swing of things, Dad. Oh.
You all right?
Yes, just rearranging my legs. How's your week been? Let's catch up with you. What you've been doing? Anything nice?
I've had a really, really good week in the garden. Okay, it's been absolutely fascinating. Fantastic week. We've been sowing seeds in open ground. Like we've got a profile on the show with learners. I went to a birthday party, but I arrived really, really early, Mollie. Arrived at the place, the restaurant, really early, and I walked in and I said to the man behind the bar, I said, I'm ever so sorry, I'm really early for the birthday party. And he said, it's okay, you can wait for a little while if you like. I said, oh, thank you ever so much, I'll do that. And so he presented me with a tray of drinks and said, can you serve table 9 then?
Oh, good, Darren, good. Oh, wait for a bit. Good.
Oh, dear.
You've been waiting to say that, haven't you?
I've been dying to say that.
Since I rang you earlier. I know. Brilliant. Is that the calibre of the jokes for a little bit later on?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, okay. Love it. Did you get your beans in? You or your students do these 40-year-old beans? Yeah,
we've done our 40-year-old beans, so I'll keep reporting on you.
They're
doing other trials as well. Our level 3 students have to do plant trials. They have to set up a plant trial and actually run it for 6 weeks. So it's part of their plant trials that they're actually doing at Winterbourne.
Exciting.
By the way, I had a lady come up to me at Winterbourne this week and she said, are you Darren Rudge? And I went, yes.
I bet you actually did say it exactly like that. Yeah.
And she went, oh, I love you.
What Was she a planter at Winterbourne? It wasn't one of your students, was it?
It was a volunteer, actually, because they have a range of volunteers at the garden. She said, I love listening to you and Molly on the radio and on your podcast and everything. And then she said, well, I think you're great. So there you go.
That's nice.
I thought that was really lovely.
Darren's going to be telling us shortly about the option of being buried in your own garden after we talk about protecting your bulbs, first of all. Now, we had Maureen, lovely Maureen, Darren, on the Facebook page, dying to stick her begonias out, but she actually sent a picture in of a squiggle sitting on her fence, eyeing up her empty hanging baskets. I mean, it was a great picture, as in, go on, Maureen, I dare you to plant your begonias and I'll have them. And she was saying begonias go, bulbs go. It is difficult to deter squirrels, and there's a little conversation happened on the Facebook page. And who was it? Was it Paul? Yeah, Paul was saying about curry plants for cats and squirrels, and coffee grinds for a variety of things, including slugs. I mean, there are lots of natural things you can use, aren't there, Darren, to deter, well, all sorts of visitors that you don't want in your pots and gardens.
Yeah, chili powder works quite well. So that will definitely deter them. I mean, obviously, they're a persistent pest, but they're only doing what they, what comes naturally, aren't they? It's normally chicken wire, isn't it, that we recommend, Moll? So if you can put some chicken wire over the top of your pot or on the ground where you've actually planted your bulbs, it'll stop them from trying to dig through, because they won't dig through the chicken wire. But yeah, coffee grinds works well. Curry plants, can work well, but they tend to just get past curry plants. I must admit,
I think that was more for cats, actually, the curry plants.
So chili powder is probably the ultimate deterrent. You can use soap. They hate soap. They cannot stand soap on their skin, and they don't like the smell of soap. But don't use imperial leather. Just use a basic range soap. It cost you £1, something like that, and just grate it up, and then just spread it around the place. And obviously, when it rains, you'll have to put some more down. Soap has worked quite effectively for me on bird feeders and things like that. Birds won't take it, and it won't hurt birds, but squirrels just don't like it at all. So there's 2 or 3 things you can actually try and deter squirrels. But if they're determined enough, they'll get it there. The other thing is to set up a feeding station, especially for squirrels. I mean, squirrels will be looking for the sweet nuts in the mix. Birds don't really care. They've got no sense of taste, birds. So what you can do is just actually set up a feeding station for them and push them to one section of the garden if you can do. But it's a persistent thing, isn't it? They're going to have a go at anything, really, aren't they, at this time of year, because they're hungry.
Yeah.
They're poor little critters.
Steve Moss, actually, on the Facebook, great gardening name. He was advocating soap. Hi to you, Steve, if you're listening. We have 4 or 5. I think there's 5 actually, Darren. Husband and I only noticed them yesterday, which strangely, but we haven't. The reason we haven't noticed them is because we haven't mown yet, so the grass is quite long. But there are 5 Queen of the Night tulips in the front garden, and sort of like round the side, that have come up in the lawn. We didn't plant them. And I said yesterday, I wonder if a squirrel's nicked them from somewhere down the road, one of our neighbours, and buried them in our lawn. Well, they're definitely Queen of the Night, and we don't have any Queen of the Night, but they're beautiful in the lawn. But that must have been a squiggle.
Yeah, and that's, sometimes how these things
Great. Worked in our favour.
Yeah, it's brilliant,
Steal
isn't
them
it?
from the neighbours and bury them in our garden.
I mean, the other alternative is to hire Bear, because Bear loves squirrels.
Does he? Yeah, you're all right with your begonias.
Walking through Cannock Chase yesterday was
yes, your pictures.
Brilliant. Yeah,
lovely.
Because he cannot get close to them, but he'll just sit by the tree staring at it. And there's this squirrel up the tree, just literally at him, because they're chatter, don't they, squirrels?
Down,
yeah, just chattering down
Lobbing
at him, and he's just thinking, you come down here, mate, and I'll show you what I mean.
Talking of dogs, on a serious point, we had the problem a week ago that it was both dogs dug up bulbs, they dug up the lilies, they dug up a massive patch near where I had planted the new roses, and there was blood, fish and bone used. Not by me, but my husband does use it, blood, fish and bone, and the dogs have dug up an awful lot of stuff because of that. It is one thing to watch and badgers as well, and foxes. If you're going to use blood, fish and bone, they're pinpointing the scent is very acute, isn't it? And they will dig up if you do use it.
Yeah, so either mix it well into the soil, and sometimes that doesn't do it, or if you plant potatoes and using it as what we call a base dressing, so under the ground where you plant it, just make sure it's mixed into the subsoil well, because as Mollie says, any little sniff and they just think it's food and they're after it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Dig your tatties out before they've even had a chance to start. There you go, be careful.
If you'd like to get in touch with Mollie Green and Darren Rudge at the Happy Garden Podcast, then all you have to do is follow them on social media. Just search for the Happy Garden Podcast. If you'd like to send them an email at the Happy Garden Podcast, you can email thehappygardenpodcast@gmail.com. Can we say Happy Garden Podcast just one more time? The Happy Garden Podcast.
We would love you to get in touch about anything here on the Happy Garden Podcast. So a couple of weeks ago on the Happy Garden Podcast, we crossed over to America to talk to a facility that composts humans and returns soil to their loved ones to use on the garden. And we had lots of Facebook comments on the podcast Facebook page asking whether you could actually be buried in your own garden. So we set you, Dazzler, a little bit of homework, didn't we? So next you're going to talk to us about being buried at home. It sounds really interesting.
Well, it's quite fascinating, actually, and I think people are going to be surprised as to what I've come up with as your intrepid reporter.
Yes.
and searching out the details of being buried at home.
Well, we'll do that next, but right now let's get back to our chat with Luke Phillips from the RSPB. Now, I've already discussed with him the results of this year's Big Garden Birdwatch, but I also asked him about how to make a difference in your own garden. Well, Luke, let's get back to the garden. 7 in 8 households, of course, are lucky enough to have access to a garden. So if we all do our bit as, a whole, we're really going to make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that whatsoever, that, gardens these days, they are a bit of a refuge for so many species, way beyond birds. I think when I look at my garden, I'm kind of looking at my garden now, and, some people might call it an absolute mess, or because I leave my garden pretty wild. Natural, that's the word. Yeah, I'll certainly use that with my neighbours next time they mention the state of the garden. But I look at my garden as a bit of an ecosystem. So I was out at the weekend. It wasn't raining, which was a bit of a miracle. Wow. But I managed to make a little log pile when I was clearing through some steps there. I found some old broken pots, so I kind of put those on the side, which if I lift them now, they're full of wood lice and probably lots of slugs and snails. But also I found some slow worms in the garden, which was amazing. So they've now got a little place. I've got my bee boxes up in the garden, and naturally, I'm trying to encourage as many different species of native plants to grow as I possibly can. So whenever I see something kind of popping up in the path, I look at it and go, "Ooh, is that going to be of value to nature?" And often I leave it. So I've got primroses all through my path at the moment, which it's hard to kind of not to step on them. But anything people can do in gardens is absolutely brilliant. And there's some real key things where we're coming to that time of year where all the grass starts to grow, and there's that fantastic campaign called No Mow May. Where we're getting towards that time of year where people can leave their lawns kind of go a bit wild, see what wildflowers come up. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant campaign. It's absolutely wonderful. And using, just kind of ideally not using things like pesticides, because they do have sort of knock-on effects to the wider wildlife. If you're shopping as well in garden centres, just look at things like compost, and don't use peat-free compost if you can as well, because that will actually have bigger impacts on the wider countryside. Because obviously peat is extracted from places like our uplands. So not using peat is a really good way of helping the wider countryside. But yeah, so much people can do in gardens that it's sort of endless, really.
Share and share alike, I like to say as well. We have the questions about the grubs and the caterpillars and how do I control or kill this, that and the other. But they are part of the food chain for bats and lots of birds as well. So you do have to give a little, don't you, when gardening?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of, creating that space. I mean, I've got what's it called? A something or other kale. I'm not a massive gardener myself, I must confess.
Something or other kale.
It's something, and every year I leave it be, and it gets decimated by the caterpillars, the white butterfly caterpillars. People often call them the cabbage whites, and I just leave them eat that. I take them off all the rest of the garden, and I pick up the caterpillars and put them on there. But I just kind of leave them be. Yeah.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, I like to transport them around.
spread them about. But then that's lovely because then there's some for you, some for the birds. You know, as I say, share and share alike. And there is nothing nicer than butterflies, no matter what they are. I just think butterflies in the summer are joyous.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I can't imagine, a stroll through the garden without seeing, butterflies fluttering around. It's just, it just wouldn't be summer without that, would it?
Exactly. Oh, Luke, it's been so lovely to have you on. Thank you ever so much for your company.
No worries. No, it's great to chat about. Like I say, Big Garden Birdwatch. It's that fantastic annual event that does give that little bit of hope with so many people taking part. Yeah. So and a huge thank you to everybody who did it, of course, at home. It's it's because of everybody out there who takes part that we get all this data and it makes a difference. And
the picture emerges. Well, of course, it's not the only thing you do all year. There's lots on your website, isn't there? The RSPB website for the events and lots of information for people to have a look and join in on.
Oh, absolutely stacks. Absolutely. Yeah. Head there and you'll find plenty of spring-related things to do now that winter's hopefully passed us by.
And your website then?
Yeah, it's rspb.org.uk.
Luke Phillips there from the RSPB, their website, rspb.org.uk. Right then, Darren, the bit that lots of people have been waiting for. Can you be buried at home? Can you go into your garden when you cease to exist? Can you push up your own daisies? Is it possible?
Well, most definitely, it's possible. Okay, but the number of land burials in people's back gardens in the UK is quite small. But with regards to rules and regulations, there's certain things that are imperative, but you're going to be really surprised as to how easy it is to actually bury somebody in your back garden, folks. So you must have the consent of the owner. This is what...
and the person that's died.
And the person that's died, yeah. And the freeholder should check that there's no sort of restricted covenants attached to the title deeds of the actual burial itself. You must be able to satisfy the Environment Agency's rules and regulations, namely you're 10 metres away from any dry ditch, 30 metres away from any spring or running or standing water, 50 metres away from any well, borehole or spring that supplies water for any use. Now there's a minimum depth for the actual grave, which I'm going to tell you about in a little while, and you're going to be surprised at this as well, folks. And the person responsible for the burial must obtain a certificate of authority for the burial from births, deaths and marriages. And that certificate must then be completed and returned to the local authority births, deaths and marriages register. And finally, the owner of the land in which the burial has taken place must prepare and keep a burial register. So in other words, he must register where the burial has been, what the date was, okay, and keep an update of that in a safe place. Now, the role of the local authority in this is very, very limited. Perhaps the one big single fact regarding private land burial is that surprises most people is that you don't need planning permission. It's not required. And the simple reason for that is you can have up to sort of 5 burials on the land without sort of having a material change of use. You don't need planning permission from your local authority. Now, digging the grave, you can do it yourself. There are subcontractors out there, folks, that will come along and do it for you. But recommendations are that there is a minimum depth between the actual soil surface and the coffin lid of just 2 feet. And that recommended shallow grave is there because of quicker breakdown of the body with more oxygen being available. If your plot is chosen in a footpath or a natural footpath area, then it is recommended by the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 that you ensure that the pathway is closed for the burial time and that people are actually told about the fact that there's a grave there. Now, some final points to consider. Although there are fewer regulations for you to consider, folks, there are pretty severe consequences, or there may be, of actually having a burial on your own private land. What about access to the grave should you sell the property in the future? It's possible to have what's called a right of access granted, but actually the person buying the property might not want to have you just sort of arriving and popping flowers down. What effect would a burial or burials have on the property value? Over the years, it has been argued that it would have an adverse on the effect on what the actual value of the property would be, but you can argue against that. The property itself, some properties could actually get away with having burials. If you say got you a piece of green land next to an oak tree on a large property, then it probably wouldn't be as bad as having a grave in your own back garden in a sort of an urban setting. And although planning permission is not required for the limited number of burials, you may want to just tell your local authority that this is going on. And then the one final point is that with regards to burying something on your property, namely a person, it's quite unusual to do that in this country, and it will attract attention. So you might want to tell the local police that this is going on so that they don't sort of get wrong-footed and get the wrong idea as to what you're actually doing in your own back garden. And there you go, folks. You can bury a relative in your own back garden with very, very little regulation, apart from the stipulations from the Environment and Countryside Act 1981, and you don't need any planning consent from your local authority. What do you think about that, Mollie?
I think it's absolutely fascinating. I didn't know half of that stuff. I thought you'd have to jump through hoops to bury one loved one, your spouse or, whoever it is, up to 5 people. And
up to 5 people, yeah. And as long as you don't sort of mark the grave with anything significant, like a mausoleum, there's no planning permission required.
Oh, it is your little codicil at the end, though. Very true. Tell the police, just in case. You can imagine the helicopters, the spotlights, the armed police arriving. But no, that is absolutely fascinating. And thank you if you did get in touch to ask us, which obviously I passed on to Darren as homework, to investigate. If there's anything garden-wise, garden-related, gardening-related, anything you'd like us to investigate, then, do get in touch with us. So, Darren, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you for doing all that.
Well, I found it really fascinating as well, because, we could start a business, couldn't we?
What? Well, we are always looking for other avenues, aren't we?
Alternative income.
Yes. What started as selling spider plants in a lay-by on the dual carriageway could now be a fully licensed funeral service.
I mean,
yes.
2 feet down is not far to go, is it, really? And there you go.
And you can dig it yourself. Honestly, so much you said was just fascinating. I'm actually going to go back, as I'm sure a lot of people will do, as you can do with the podcast, literally just rewind it. I'm going to go back and have a listen to all of that again. Fascinating. Yeah.
Great stuff.
Thanks,
you.
Darren. Yes. Right, let's get some adverts in here on the Happy Garden podcast. T'other side, don't go anywhere, though, because Andy Lowndes here with the history of bluebells. It is such a lovely piece, so stay there, because our Andy Lowndes, Amaze and Astound with Andy Lowndes, will be here shortly. Also, Jimmy the Mower making a little return on your lawn care as well, going forward with all this rain. And Darren's got a few questions and bits and bobs. And, we'll see you just in a couple of ticks after just a few adverts. Welcome back. Now, let's get... Well, Andy Lowndes here shortly talking beautiful bluebells, but let's get Jimmy the Mower back on. Yay! Don't we love him? He's like our new bestie. Yeah,
he's great.
He's ace. We met him last week. Fascinating guy who went from retail, used to work at Merry Hell. I haven't been to Merry Hell for years. It's not too far from you, is it? A shopping centre.
No, it's not. And I haven't been to Merry Hell for a few years either.
No. But anyway, Jimmy used to work there. Then he went on to be a groundsman, wanted to work outside. One casual tweet from Jimmy went viral and he's now an international turf influencer. We learnt a bit about his story and his passion, but we did run out of time last week to fit in a little bit more about his YouTube channel, because we were talking about the weather and the fact that he was concentrating on his YouTube channel a bit more because he couldn't get out and mow. And we did ask him about lawn care as well. So let's return to our chat.
I'd say it's been a long old winter, but I don't really feel like we've had a winter. It feels like we've just had a constant sort of autumn.
Yeah.
From the end of September onwards. It's just been rain and more rain and slightly warmer rain, slightly colder rain. I think we've had about 3 frosts and
more
one
rain?
light dust in the snow where we are. Yeah, that's it. And then more rain.
Yeah.
The snow didn't stay for long. It was just more rain. It's been one of the hardest seasons I've ever known for maintaining grass sports surfaces, really.
How have you coped?
How I cope, goodness me.
I don't know, just try to get out and about where we can and just do things and keep active and really just try and fit in anything we can, anywhere we can. It's been quite a struggle, really, quite a struggle. We normally cut football pitches and cricket outfields up until the end of November, maybe the first week in December. If you're a professional sports ground, you're cutting every single week of the year, you'll be cutting. For us, we tend to have a break from December, January, maybe start the end of February. You get some nice sort of cold, crisp days in February with the bright sunshine and the ground's firm enough to get the machines out, and it's a nice time of year to be out. But unfortunately this year we didn't have many of those. It was just a bit grey. So by the time we sort of get into March, we're normally cutting and we've hit the ground running. We might have got a couple in February time, but unfortunately this year we didn't. And then we're into March, and then we didn't get to cut a lot of our grounds in March either, and now we're already into April, and it's wow, we're really up against it, and it's quite a shocker, really. There's still places that we haven't managed to cut yet. Our largest ride-on mower is about 1.5 tons in weight, and cut a full football pitch in about 35 to 40 minutes, and that's great when we're up and running. But unfortunately, at the moment, you're having to use smaller machines, lighter machines, and it just takes so much longer if you can even do it at all. It's been a real trial.
So what have you been doing instead with your time, Jimmy?
I've got a YouTube channel, so we do YouTube videos on servicing bits of mowers and troubleshooting with mowers and other workshop things. I don't know, we do a video on almost anything, whether it's a workshop vacuum that I've bought, whether it's a stovetop fan that we've bought, or whether
I
it's
like a stovetop fan. I do. I do.
and a video on how they work. That's nice. It. Yeah, that's it. But then all this sort of stuff, how to use a rivet gun, which sort of oils we use or grease we use, how to mix the fuel to go in your strimmers and chainsaws, and how to take care of batteries, because now we've got battery equipment. You need to make sure your batteries are kept sort of frost-free over winter so they don't lose their charge and damage the cells and things like that. There's so much to it, and in and around anything from the sort of grounds maintenance work that we do to mowers to general workshop stuff, how to put a shelf up, drill a hole in a piece of wood.
How to make a ham sandwich.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. If that comes
Potato
up,
dolphin wires.
Yes. Well, it's funny you'd say that, because I had a really big hit video over Christmas. Every year I do a Christmas ham. I boil a big gammon ham up, and I do honey mustard glaze on the top and roast it.
Right.
And I always put the photos on Twitter, and everybody loves it. And they always ask me for the recipe, and I've put it on there a few times. But what I find out is, within the industry that I work in, there's a lot of people who probably aren't, the best at reading and writing and things like that, which I'm not either, I don't profess to be, and they find it difficult with instruction booklets sometimes. So I just sat there and I was like, right, okay, I've shown you how to do. This is why the videos came about. So showing people how to do it. There's a lot of people, and they can just watch me do it, and they'll know that then for the rest of their lives.
Cooking
That's
videos.
How it works. Yeah, so I did this cooking video, and I thought, right, I'll do it. Cooking video. Yeah, so I did a cooking video, and there it is. And then I've got all these great big burly groundsmen messaging me saying, thanks, Jimmy.
Brilliant.
My wife can't believe this. I've cooked a beautiful honey and mustard glazed gammon ham, and I can't even boil an egg. I followed your instructions, did the video, and it was mega, really. It's crazy, really. It's crazy. I'm just Jimmy the mower. I'm just the chap who comes along and cuts your council football pitches or local football pitches or kids' play parks or whatever we cut in that week or looking after. And I think it's just struck a chord with people. You're down to earth. I enjoy what I do. Well, I love what I do. I really do. And I like helping people. And if people get in touch with me with a problem, I can make a video about it, and they can watch the video and it solves their problem. And if they've got a problem, there must be hundreds, if not thousands, of other people who think the same thing, and it just works out for them and for me and for everyone else. And all the sort of ad revenue that we get from YouTube and stuff, it goes back into the business and helps us to, provide a service for the kids and the Sunday League football and cricket, really.
Jimmy, you are so lovely. Well, listen, I ought to ask you finally, the Happy Garden podcast listeners, their lawns, our lawns, What on earth should we be? I mean, Darren's always advocating mowing the lawn. Should we be staying off them? What should we be doing at the moment? What would your advice be at the minute?
Do you know what? At the minute, if you can resist the temptation to get out there and cut it, then I would say resist if you can. I know it looks a little bit long and a little bit straggly, and you think you want to get out there and neaten it up, but the grass might be dry, but if the soil underneath is still soaking wet, when you're walking along, you're squeezing all the air out of that soil, and it'll just turn it into like a slab of concrete. And I'm sure we all remember playing fields when we were younger, and the goal area, the goal mouth is just solid with no grass in it, and that's what will happen to your lawn. It'll just get squashed down, and it can't root properly, and it'll just stifle the grass. So if you can keep off it, please keep off it. If it's dry enough underfoot and you think you can get away with it, do it. Lift your blades up. Make sure you've got a nice, new, clean, sharp blade on your mower, and just take it over and just clip the tops off. As soon as you clip the tops off, it will just kickstart the grass into action, and it will start. And once you start cutting it, you need to be cutting it on a sort of weekly basis if you can. But if you can hang off. If you can aerate, then that's even better. There's all sorts of bits and pieces you can get cheap from Amazon, whether it's a little spiked roller that you can use to walk up and down the lawn, punch some holes in there to allow the drainage and allow a bit of air down to the roots. They're like the oxygen, nitrogen and whatever down at the roots, and it will give it a bit of a boost. So if you can do that, there's a roller, there's some sandals. They're hilarious. I've bought some of those sandals myself and bought to put down. It's worth it. It's worth the £20 just for the laugh, really. Yeah. It is. It's funny. But yeah, if you can, hold on for another week or two until it warms up, and then it'll start to go. And when you're cutting, they all say, never take more than like sort of half the grass or whatever. I err on the side of caution. I'll take about a quarter of it off, and then you can cut again in another 3 or 4 days. Take another quarter of the height off it until you're down to the height that you'd like. And then once it's down, you can just give it a feed and give it a bit of a boost, and it'll come back, and you should have a lovely, lush green lawn, hopefully. Fingers crossed we have a nice summer if we can sit out and enjoy our lawns, eh?
Oh, God, that would be good. I spoke to Jim Dale from the Weather Services not long ago. He said everything is aligning. I mean, obviously it's not 100%, but he said for now the charts look like we're going to be late 30s, maybe touching 40 again in the summer. We'll all be moaning that the grass will be tinder dry.
Well, do you know what? The grass will always come back. It always does. It always does. You don't ever look at an open space and a playing field and it's just been burnt off, and then it never goes green again. It'll always go green. A drop of rain. Grass is resilient stuff, isn't it? It's so difficult to grow where you want it to make it grow where you want it to grow, but spill some grass seed and it soon comes up between your block paving and your slabs and wherever you want it.
You're right.
It's a fantastic plant, really. It really is. And you're cutting it and mowing it, and if we're going to get some nice temperatures, there's enough moisture in the ground there to keep it going for quite a long time, so we shouldn't have to worry about watering either. That'll be a nice summer. I look forward to sitting out there, and I'll hold you to that one as well.
Well, definitely. Well, listen, if it's okay with you, if you could be our resident lawn expert on the Happy Garden podcast, I've no doubt we'll be after your help in time to come. It's so lovely to meet your acquaintance, Jimmy. You're ace. I love you.
Brilliant. Thank you. It's great to be on here as well. I really appreciate it. I really do.
If you want to hear more about Jimmy, you can head to his website, jimmythemower.com. I was going to talk to you about your event in Knowle. Did you go for a curry afterwards at the Allura in Knowle?
No. It's a good curry house.
Yes, we were talking about it the other week, and you said you went there loads.
Oh, right.
Right, let's start that again. You've forgotten your own lies, Darren.
Oh, the Allura!
Forgotten your own lies.
I know the one.
Well, even though you don't. Twist. Did you put? Yes, I think you put the event up on the Facebook page, didn't you? And it just really made me laugh because So they'd labelled it as back by popular demand, the hilarious Darren Rudge, which I thought was just lovely. They must adore you there.
Well, yeah, I mean, part 1 it was part 2 that I was delivering last week. So, yeah, it went really, really well.
Very clever. I was going to say, very clever of you to break it up into segments, so you have to keep coming back.
Well, yeah, well, there's 6 parts, actually.
Is there?
Yeah, so there are 6 parts.
Excellent.
So I can keep going back 6 years on the trot. Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. That's
Brilliant.
the idea, really.
Nice one, Darren. That's what you call business acumen. We should get you on next year's Apprentice.
Ooh, I don't know what he'd think.
Oh, did you stay for the bingo, by the way?
Some good raffle prizes. They did some really. There was like 25 raffle prizes.
Did you ever go?
Yeah, I did,
Oh,
but
cool.
I didn't win anything. But when you got 60 ladies in the room and they're all fighting over raffle prizes, it's quite funny.
Was there no men there at all?
No, there's no men at all because it's the women's it's the women's guild.
Oh, right,
basically.
okay. I thought it was
So
the
there's
British
no men
Legion.
there.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay. That
Well,
explains
it's the women's side of the British Legion.
Oh, I
But
see.
They're all ladies. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They all want the potpourri or something, and
Sexist.
It's the first thing to go, isn't it?
Casual sexism. What, potpourri? Nobody
Yeah.
uses that anymore. Do they?
Or the oven gloves.
Ooh, you could. Oh no, that really is casual. Set saucepans, Darren. Casual sexism. Stick that down. Have you got an ideas book?
Yeah.
Stick that down. Maybe in the summer, Darren's homemade guide to potpourri.
Yeah, definitely.
Stick that in the ideas book.
Yeah, we can do essential oils as well if you like.
Yeah. Oh no, that would be nice.
Essential oil. Right. I'm writing it down.
Jot that down. Good, keep your hands busy. You probably haven't noticed in the podcast, for the last, well, all of the podcasts up to now, we can hear you rubbing your trousers. Yes! Is that a nervous thing? Or?
It's because I'm really excited to be on the podcast and I'm
is
full
it?
of nervous
Full of
energy.
beans.
I'm full of nervous energy.
Oh, you are lovely. Well, you can expend some very, very shortly with your seed sowing slot. All right?
Oh, yes.
That's on the horizon. After we've done Andy Lound, you're going to love this. It is so, so sweet. And Darren, you've probably seen, I've been putting bits and pieces. I see your walk on Cannock Chase, and I rise you a walk in a bluebell wood on the Facebook page. I had the nicest walk. They're not quite at their peak. I'd say they will be in the next week or so. But when you get a wood or an area it has thousands of bulbs, it is carpeted in purple. Actually, they haven't gone purple yet. As I say, probably in a week or so they'll be at their peak, but just lovely. And if you have tiptoed through the bluebells, you'll appreciate this. Here's Andy Lound.
It's Amaze and Astound with Andy Lound. That's me. Hello, Mollie and Darren. There is a silent eloquence in every wild bluebell that fills my softened heart with bliss that words could never tell. A poem by Anne Bronte of one of the most wonderful flowers, the bluebell. Bluebells are a bell-shaped perennial herb. They actually spend the majority of their time underground as bulbs, emerging, often in droves, to flower from April onwards. The leaves are narrow, around 7 to 25 millimetres wide and 45 centimetres in length. They are strap-shaped, smooth and hairless with a pointed tip. Ah, but it is the flower that enchants us. Usually deep violet blue in colour, bell-shaped, with 6 petals and upturned tips. These sweet-smelling flowers nod or droop to one side of the flowering stem, known as inflorescence, and have creamy white-coloured pollen inside. Some bluebell flowers can be white or pink. Up to 20 flowers can grow on one inflorescence. Bluebells are native to Western Europe and the United Kingdom, being a species stronghold. They're associated with ancient woodland and are often used in combination with other species as a clue that a wood is ancient. They reach their greatest densities in the UK's woods, where many thousands of bulbs can exist in one woodland, creating the incredible blue carpets we fondly associate with spring. They also grow along hedgerows and fields. Due to their links with spring and the spectacular vision of blue, it is not surprising that they are associated with stories from folklore, many of which involve dark fairy magic. Bluebell woods are believed to be intricately woven with fairy enchantments, used by these mischievous beings to trap humans. It is also said that if you hear a bluebell ring, you will be visited by a bad fairy and will die not long after. Hence the common use of bluebell woods in midsummer murders. What? You never noticed? If you are to pick a bluebell, many believe you will be led astray by fairies, wandering lost forever. Ah, so that's the reason for my life's journey. In the language of flowers, the bluebell is a symbol of humility, constancy, gratitude and everlasting love. It is said that if you turn a bluebell flower inside out without tearing it, you will win the one you love. And if you wear a wreath of bluebells, you will only be able to speak the truth. Bluebells, though, are not just ornamental. Their sticky sap was once used to bind the pages of books and glue the feathers onto arrows, and during the Elizabethan period their bulbs were crushed to make starch for the ruffs of collars and sleeves. Due to their toxicity, there has been little use for bluebells in modern medicine. However, their bulbs have a diuretic, in other words it increases urination, and styptic, helps stop bleeding properties. And research on how these flowers could potentially help fight cancer is currently ongoing. The bluebell is protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, and this means digging up the plant or bulb in the countryside is prohibited, and landowners are prohibited from removing bluebells from their land to sell. It's one of my favourite flowers, partly due to the colour, but partly due to the fairy world. So, Mollie, how about putting this bluebell wreath over your head and tell me all? What sort of fairy are you? So, Mollie and Darren, more from the potting shed next time.
Andy Lound, thank you, Andy.
Yay!
Oh, that was gorgeous. And they really are, thanks, Andy. Oh, they really are little magical bells, aren't they, used by the fairies.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
They are. They're just lovely. They are. Andy, thank you. As always, Amaze and Astound with Andy Lound will be back on the podcast next week. And as always, if there's anything you'd like him to investigate, any sort of horticultural history of anything horticultural, yeah, then do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you and we can let Andy know what you'd like. Shall we do your seed sowing slot, our Dazzler?
Yeah, let's do my seed sowing slot.
All right, let's introduce you with the Houseplant Band.
My packets of seeds are keen to breed the tins that overflow. But what I need is advice to heed. There's so much I don't know. Tell me what to plant on Mondays. Tell me what to sow on Sundays. Tell me when would be a good day so they shoot up and don't die down. Pitiful.
Okay. All right. Over to you, Daz.
Well, folks, it's time to get outdoors and get those seeds in the ground. We're thinking particularly vegetables here, but hardy annuals as well can be popped outside at this time of year. And this is, these are plants that are going to grow and flower and produce crops in the positions that you actually put them into. Now, it's been a bit wet. I think you might agree with me. Get outside and just assess the conditions to begin with. Because when you're sowing seeds, you need to create what's called a really fine tilth. And if the soil is claggy and wet, you won't be able to create that. So that might be a little bit of an excuse for a week or so, but you still will need to get out there and do this. Now, you start the process by doing what's called secondary cultivation. So in the autumn, you might well have dug your plot, single dug it and put some compost or manure down underneath the soil and turned it over and left it open for the frost to get into and break up that soil, unless you're operating a no-dig system, of course. And that's called primary cultivation. So Secondary cultivation is getting that soil into the state where you can actually sow seeds into it. And what you don't want is big particle sizes, so big holes in the soil, because as soon as you start to sow the seed, they're just going to disappear. So the first thing for you to actually do it is just prick over the ground. So literally get your fork out, and only around about a quarter of the way down the tines on your fork, just prick it over and work across your plot. And then you need to consolidate it. So this is getting your boots on, working with a heel-toe movement on your feet across your plot. And you end up with like tractor tyres by doing this across your plot. So you work up and down, and you've actually consolidated. You've squashed all that air into the ground. So you've got those pore spaces down to tiny pore spaces. Now you begin raking. So you can use your rake, a comb rake, in two different ways. You can use the tines just to rake over generally, and then flip it over on its back, and you'll have the flat edge of the comb rake, and you can actually move soil using that. So you're looking for bumps, undulations and dips, and trying to get as flat a surface as possible. Now rake back and forwards, and then rake at 45 degrees, folks, across your plot, so that you start to get those particle sizes down to a really, really fine tilth. Now, you'll probably spend an hour doing this, okay, and then you want a cup of tea and a piece of cake. But then, once you've gone down to your fine tilth, folks, you've got a really nice seed bed to actually start sowing seeds. Now, to sow lettuce, they don't really need a deep trench at all. So you can actually take just a garden cane, lie it on its back and push it into the soil. And there it is. There's your trench to sow into. Always water the trench before you sow any seed. Pop the watering can along it and just let it soak in for a couple of moments, and then sow your seed and then cover the seed on the top. Then you've got things like peas that you might want to consider, and you can take out a full trench or a full drill for that using a draw hoe. And space these out in a zigzag pattern across your plot. And then again, water them in, cover the seed over, and then put what we call little twigs over the top, so that as the pea shoots start to come through, birds won't come in and actually eat your peas, because they're really sweet and tender. You can eat them actually, so you might want to just snaffle a few for yourself, but certainly put some old prunings or something like that pushed into the soil. And then finally, things like beans, those type of things, you can literally just pop in at the bottom of canes and station sow. So put 2 beans in a particular hole at the bottom of, say, a tripod or an obelisk, something like that, or even in a row. And the reason why we put 2 in is so that you're actually guaranteed that one will actually germinate. And remember, with beans, you're trying to get them down at least double the depth of the actual bean itself. And then watering afterwards. And there you go. That's the way to sow seeds in open ground. Now, next week, what I will do is I'll profile individual plants and how to guarantee success. But don't forget, pea sticks, which is the twiggy bits for your peas. Your lettuce just need a cane to be laid flat and pushed into the soil, and there it is. There's your seed drill. And beans need to be planted individually, but plant 2 at a time and station sow. There you go. We're moving on, aren't we? We've got things indoors growing on now, folks, or you should have. And now we've got things that are potentially going to be growing on outdoors in your open ground.
Cool. It's so exciting, isn't it? Isn't it an exciting time of year?
It's great this time of year. It's absolutely fabulous. And just to see the look on your faces when you've grown some seed and you've actually germinated them, it's fabulous, isn't it?
You're doing that thing with your
time of year.
Trousers again.
Oh, yeah.
You are literally sowing the summer as we speak.
I am. Yeah,
gorgeous,
you are, yeah.
Gorgeous.
It's lovely.
Love you, Darren. Now, next week on the podcast, RSPB is going to be joining us.
Right.
Royal Society. Royal...
Go on.
What's the O for? The Royal something, the Society for the Prevention of Accidents. What's the O for?
Official.
The Royal...
Organisation.
Hang on, let me Google that. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Why's it got an O in? Or maybe they just put an additional O in so, you know, they could make something of it. What does RSPB stand for? Hang on. RSPB. Here. It doesn't say. It just says it's the leading voice in health and safety that campaigns to reduce avoidable accidents at home, on the road, in the garden, at work and at leisure. What does this stand for, though?
Oh, dear.
What?
I'm just having a jelly baby.
RSPB. Oh, don't chew. I've got misophonia. Stand for. Don't chew. Don't breathe and don't chew. Have you heard that before from your wife? RSPB.
I can't talk now.
Good. No, you're fine. No,
difficult.
I know. Gosh, I know you're choking there. No, I know you have to have that gel. That you know. I'm hypoglycemic. I need that croissant. If you don't have a jelly baby, you could die being a diabetic. Oh, here we are.
Exactly.
Ross,
At least I could be buried in my own back garden.
That's true. You need to make... Well, last week you wanted to be composted. You've got to make your wishes known, Darren, in case of a terrible accident.
I've got too many options now.
Yeah. Well, there's another option as well that I saw this week, although it's nothing to do with gardening, so I don't think we can really cover it. But it was. Oh, I can't remember what it's called now. Hang on, I'll Google it after I finish with RSPB. I've got my iPad in my hand. It was composting, but via water.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
No.
Well, hang on. Let's just deal with RSPB. RSPB, it is the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, and they've just used the O out of Royal. That's what it is.
That's very stupid, isn't it?
Well, they needed a vowel, though, didn't they, for it to make sense? So, anyway, now there's lots of things in the air. Hang on, I'll tell you why RSPB's joining us next week. But let me just Googlate. What did I say? Composting via...
Composting in water.
Compost in water. Composting humans in water. Oh, we do cover quite a bit of stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
Composting...
It's been a bit of death the last few weeks, so most.
Composting humans in water. Here we are. This is it. Yeah. It's called aquamation.
Wow.
Aquamation.
Da-da. Aquamation. Da-da. Aquamation.
I might have a look at that for next week. Anyway.
Really?
Well, maybe. It's not as if you can do it in your garden pond, is it? So I don't know how we could make that into anything garden-wise. Anyway, let's get back to RSPB. Now, gosh, that's all taken a while, hasn't it, to get back to the fact that they're with us next week. Because Rotivator Rupert, one of our lovely listeners, I think we touched on it last week on the podcast, had to spend the night in hospital because he'd pricked his finger on a blackthorn.
Yeah.
Septicemia set in. So we thought we'd do something about accidents in the garden. Hence, RSPB's going to join us. They say there's 6,500 accidents a year with lawnmowers. That comes in at number one. And that frightens the life out of me. That'll be mowing over the cable, I'd have thought, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Number two is accidents with flower pots. 5,500 with flower pots. One would imagine that's the ceramic type that I think you mentioned it last week, didn't you? Oh, actually, you're going to tell us next week about your accident with a flower pot and the fact that it becomes a really dangerous weapon.
Yeah.
Like scissor sharp. Oh.
It was razor sharp. It was like a scalpel.
Yeah. So we'll get that story from you next week. Secateurs, pruners, spades, electric hedge trimmers. Oh, my God. Coming in at number 5. Trough, shears, garden forks, the list goes on. We'll talk about it more next week. On electric hedge trimmers, my husband's leg, Darren, he looks like he's had a shark attack. When I first met him, I was horrified when he took his trousers off the first time. To see that scar, oh my God. And it was a hedge trimmer that went into his leg. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, so that is on the agenda for next week. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, let me give you all the ways to get in touch. But if you want to get in touch this week with any accidents that you've had or any advice you want to give everybody else about keeping safe, please do. Here are the numbers.
Get interactive with Mollie. Lovely show. Professionals. Get interactive with Mollie and Darren. Follow them on social media. It's a bit like stalking. Just search for the Happy Garden Podcast on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, and Darren will get your stories.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Next
I mean,
week
if
as
your husband wants to share his scars, I'll share you mine.
You have a scar off.
1,200 accidents a year caused by banana skins, you know, Moles.
You're joking?
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, sincerely.
Really? It'd be slips, yeah.
Slipping on banana skins, yeah.
Yeah. Wowzers. They call you Banana Man.
Yeah.
Right, we're nearly done actually, jokes and jobs. And then
Wow.
and then we're off. Oh yes, you started the podcast. Seems a long time ago now though, but you did do a joke on it was that long ago. I can't remember. What was the joke? Oh, about waiting in the restaurant. Very good. Right, let's see if you can top those. Let's get your jokes.
Now in the Happy Garden.
It's about time for some Alan Titters. Brace yourself for your gardening jokes of the week from Darren Rudge.
Right, we're braced.
Here we go then. You know you love it, folks. Why do the French prefer snails to a McDonald's?
I don't know.
Because they don't like fast food, Molly.
Oh, good, Darren. A good one to start with.
Oh.
Yeah.
My dad used to play with me in the garden by rolling me round inside old tyres, Molly. They certainly were the good years.
Oh, equally as good. Good. Number
Okay.
2. Well done, Darren.
Talking to my neighbour over the garden fence, I asked him if he'd ever seen the film Hunt for Red October. But he doesn't like films with subtitles.
Oh, good. That's in submarine. Darren, good.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah. I love the way that... hang on a second. Let me just interject. I do love the way that you make them garden-related just by the fact that you're talking to the man next door. Love it.
Well, exactly.
Very clever.
You know. Yeah. The printer in my garden office, Molly, has basically identified itself with Bob Marley because it keeps jamming.
Oh, good. Equally good. And equally, yeah, you've bent that just because you were in your garden office. Love it.
Did you hear about the bee that was allergic to pollen?
I didn't, as it goes.
He kept coming out in hives.
Good, Darren, good.
And finally, I have to say, after many, many years, my local university this week has honoured me with a PhD for services to horticulture to add to my master's and my bachelor's, Molly. I think that's called being given the 3rd degree.
Oh, saving the best till last. Darren!
Boom! Boom!
I like them very much. Good. I think you excelled yourself there.
There you go.
5 and a bonus.
More next week.
Yes.
More next week.
And as always, yeah, if you want to joke off, Darren, have a joke off again.
What?
Get in touch. What? Yeah, I didn't say that correctly. I'm still congested and confused. It's the tail end of a cold. I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, God. A joke off.
A joke off.
A joke with an O.
Joke off.
Feel free to get in touch.
Puerile.
Very.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Good. Good.
Sorry.
No,
I do apologise
I
in advance.
apologise. If I'd have said that sentence correctly, then none of that would have happened. Shall we finish with some jobs for the week ahead?
Yes.
Okay, dodging the showers and getting out and about. Then what should we be getting on with? Here's our dazzler.
Now in the Happy Garden.
Oh, I say, sweetie, this is my favourite bit. Time for Darren to be absolutely flabulous and regale us with his gardening jobs for the week ahead.
Well, yes. Go.
Well, as we said, it's all kicking off, folks, and if you are raising your own bedding plants, then it's time for them to be pricked out if you haven't already started, folks. It's pricking out season, so get them into pots and trays. Remember, pricking out gives them more room, and they'll start to flourish and grow for you. And give them a good watering and start to give them a little bit of liquid feed as well, so that it boosts them and make them into those wonderful, lovely, strong plants. Gladioli and dahlias can start to be potted if you put them into pots. Gladioli certainly can be put outdoors. Sow hardy annual seeds in the places where they are meant to flower, are ready for the summer as well. On your lawn, yes, you can be mowing now on a weekly basis. That's W-E-E-K-L-Y, okay, not W-E-A-K-L-Y. And remember that as you mow, it'll keep the thickness of your lawn and it'll keep down any weeds that try to associate themselves and get a grip with your lawn. Don't forget to aerate and scarify your lawns as well.
You know No Mow May?
Yeah.
Who started that then?
I think it was somebody like Bug's Life that recommended it to begin with, and it just took hold across the nation, yeah.
I might do it. I haven't mown yet. Have you mown yet?
No, I haven't got a lawn.
Oh, no, God, I keep forgetting. No, you haven't. No,
well, I've got sort of a lawn.
Yeah.
But it's I don't mow anyway. I don't get time.
No, I know. Bossman's holiday. Yeah.
Doing stuff.
Yeah.
Don't want to come home doing that stuff.
No, of course not. Well, I think I might do No Mow May.
Yeah. Well, you do No Mow
everything.
I do my every
bit.
month, don't you?
I can't be bothered. We didn't mow at all last year, and it was beautiful.
Yeah,
we had
gorgeous.
long, tall grasses, as in almost. Not grass, not as in green grass. We had all these like grasses that came up, and there was lots of cow parsley that came up, bluebells, which have already started coming up in the lawn as well. They must be squirrel planted. All sorts of bits and bobs that ordinarily you'd obviously mow off. But yeah, it was beautiful. It did take some trimming though at the sort of end of the season to get it back in control.
But that's doable, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing that you can do. I mean, it'll take you a little bit of a while to trim it down, but absolutely gorgeous. Your garden's gorgeous anyway.
Yeah,
so,
it is. It is. I must admit, I'm very, very proud of our garden. But letting it go wild, the actual greenery was, and the butterflies and the bees last year, it was absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, definitely going to do that again.
And the invertebrates that'll come in, and,
yes,
and the wildlife that'll come in, just make a happy home. It's astounding. Absolutely astounding.
Nice. One thing before you go, Darren, though, because hang on. Let me have a look out of the curtains, which are currently drawn. Oh, it's still lovely outside. Gorgeous. When you and I are done, I'm going to go and plant Rosa Mollie Green, which my lovely friend Darren Rudge bought for me.
And I want you to put a big, whacking, great big sign next to it.
What, Darren bought me this?
No, Mollie Green, so you don't lose it.
What, the rose?
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to ask you is, because you had this from David Austin, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And had it named after me, my gorgeous friend Darren. But what is it? Because I'm going to go and plant it this afternoon because it's getting too big for the pot now. Where should it go? How big is it going to be? How big is it going to spread? What sort of room is it going to need?
It's going to get to about 4 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
That's all. Yeah. And it's a bush rose, so it'll be quite bushy. So about 4 feet wide, 4 feet high. Okay. Yeah.
Quite bushy.
Yeah, it'll be quite bushy.
Okay, because it's a bush rose.
But it's an old-fashioned rose.
What colour is it?
It's pink, I believe.
Oh, nice.
I think I can't remember now. Told you all this when you left the BBC.
I know. Left in inverted commas. I haven't stopped working since I left. Great.
No.
Yeah, in fact, you actually asked for the rose back, seeing as I hadn't actually technically left. What's that?
It's my phone.
Oh, who is it?
Somebody from Manchester who nobody I know in Manchester.
Oh, go on, answer it. Go on.
No.
Go on.
It's gone now.
Oh.
I've clicked it off.
Oh.
I don't want to talk to anybody in Manchester.
What's wrong with people from Manchester?
Nothing. But I don't know anybody in Manchester. So it's somebody trying to sell me something. Or
Have you entered any competitions lately?
No.
It could have been Salford. Have you entered any competitions on the BBC?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm positive.
You could have won like a holiday or something.
Oh, well, they'll get back to me if it's
important. You reckon? If it's important?
Yeah.
If it's important, though. Your dad always used to say that. If it's important, they'll ring back.
They'll ring back, won't they?
Yeah.
I might have won the lottery.
I don't think they ring you.
I'm going to have to use the loo.
Well... Oh dear! Oh,
Sorry.
No, you're no. Well, should we finish then? That's a good time to finish then, isn't it? If you're Boston, all right. I am too as well. Isn't that awful? So middle-aged that the fact we both need the toilet is going to result in the end of this podcast. Well, listen, thank Darren. It's been brilliant. And all the stuff about the burials and whatnot and the seed sowing. Really, really interesting podcast today. So thank you ever so much.
Yeah, just fascinating, isn't it? Fantastic stuff. Have a good week in your garden, folks. Get out there. It's all kicking off. Go on. Get out there, have some fun.
Yeah, enjoy yourselves. And we'll see you on the Happy Garden podcast this time next week.
You've been listening to the Happy Garden podcast with Mollie Green and Darren Rudge. If you'd like to send them an email, get in touch with the Happy Garden podcast by emailing thehappygardenpodcast@gmail.com. Follow them on social media. Just search for the Happy Garden podcast. Can we say Happy Garden podcast just one more time? The Happy Garden podcast.